Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going over the first passage of the Psych-Soc section of the AAMC's new free practice exam. If you're not familiar with our channel, my name is Maggie. I'm 100th percentile MCAT score when I took the test back in 2021. But right now I'm a current medical student along with my brother John, and we co-run this channel. Our goal is to make the MCAT doable at an affordable price, and it doesn't get more affordable than free. So we like to put these resources on YouTube so that anyone can watch them and hopefully ace their MCAT with our strategies and walkthroughs. But without further ado, let's get into this Psych-Soc passage. Okay, so first things first, I like to read the title. So it says, Attachment Insecurity Responses to Critical Incident Distress and Current Emotional Symptoms in Ambulance Workers. Okay, cool. So it's probably going to be about attachment styles, maybe, or like response to stress or ambulance workers. It says early experiences with caregivers become internalized into a working model of expectations about self and others that can provide the basis for subsequent responses to stressful experiences. Attachment theory research has explored how this internalized working model influences the way in which individuals respond to stress and utilize coping resources. So it sounds like they are setting up the point of this passage to be attachment style and how that affects like your coping strategies to stress. I wouldn't normally write that much down, but look at this passage. It's so short. I can spend some time. A study examined the relationship between attachment style, distress, and use of coping strategies to regulate emotion in a sample of ambulance workers following exposure to a critical incident. So no surprises here. We're going to be getting into the research methods. So they're going to introduce you to kind of like a basic science. This is typical for Psych-Soc passages. Introduce you to like a basic science that you should have background on, and then get into a research methods, and probably tell you maybe a good bit about research methods, because this is kind of where they test that researchy stuff is in Psych-Soc. So we're going to be, we kind of already discussed that here, but we're going to be looking at the relationship between attachment style, distress, and coping strategies to regulate emotion. Attachment style was measured with a questionnaire that assessed ambulance workers' feelings about close relationships among 3 attachment dimensions: secure, avoidant, and anxious ambivalent. So you guys should definitely know a little bit of background about these attachment styles, about Mary Ainsworth's strange situation and how the babies responded in those, and a little bit about how people with this attachment style behave in adulthood. Only those ambulance workers whose scores reflected avoidant attachment were retained as participants in the study. So that's definitely important. We are only using avoidant attachment. So I'm actually going to erase this and just put avoidant attachment, coping with stress. Ambulance workers were then asked to identify a critical incident they encountered in the past. Use of coping strategies and support seeking within 24 hours of responding to a critical incident were measured. Additionally, somatic complaints, symptoms of burnout, depression, and distress, including recalling physical and emotional stress responses, were measured. So this is an important paragraph because we're getting our variables here. We're also getting study design. So this is definitely something that you want to pay attention to. We have ambulance workers that have avoidant attachment style being asked to think about a critical incident that they encountered in the past. They were then asked to, I guess they were asked, I don't know how else they would get this information, but they were then asked to talk about the use of coping strategies and support seeking within 24 hours of that critical incident. And additionally, they got also all these other variables. This is not the kind of thing I'm gonna write down because it's literally listed right here. And if I was to try to write this down, I would literally be rewriting this paragraph. So I just want to take a second to make sure that I'm digesting it, but I'm not going to write this down on my flow chart over here on the right. Results revealed that an avoidant attachment style was significantly associated with distress and symptoms of burnout, depression, and somatic complaints following exposure to a critical incident. Okay, perfect. We don't even have to look at a chart or anything. We can just literally, they tell us the results. The avoidant attachment style was significantly associated with tons of bad stuff. Shocker. This attachment style was also significantly associated with few social contacts, low satisfaction with social support, and maladaptive coping strategies. So again, this is totally something that I want to take note of that it is here, but I'm not going to write this down because I'd just be rewriting the paragraph. And I'm also I'm not going to make a chart. I'm just going to leave it as it is. If I need the results of the studies, then I'm just going to come back to that paragraph. Going straight into the questions, number 1 says, which is a plausible reason why participants with the attachment style investigated are less likely to seek support from others in times of stress? So let's simplify this question down. It's asking why people with avoidant attachment style are less likely to seek support from others in times of stress. So if you think about it, did we get a specific answer to this question in the passage? No, we did not. And what's the only thing that we have to really know about attachment styles? It's just kind of what the general characteristics are and how the babies respond in the strange situation. So this question cannot be asking anything other than what's an avoidant attachment style? What are the characteristics of it? Okay, so this one's pretty good. So you see a secure attachment, basically they're fine. They, in the strange situation, when they when the parent leaves the room, the child's going to be upset because they actually love their parent. But when their parent comes back, then they are going to be easily consoled. As you can see on the right side of this graph, they believe and trust that their needs will be met. And as an adult, they are basically fine in the relationship. They're not too anxious. They're not fearful. They're not avoidant, anything like that. The next one would be an avoidant attachment. That means that when their parent left the room in the strange situation, that they did not cry because they didn't care. You may also hear about this called a dismissive attachment or something, but usually it's called avoidant. Also, sometimes if you get deeper into psychology stuff, they will split it between avoidant fearful and avoidant dismissive. Most of the time, the MCAT just calls it avoidant, so you don't really have to worry about that. In avoidant attachment, in their adult relationships, most of the time these people will be or on the MCAT, these people will be they won't care about their partner. They'll kind of maybe go partner to partner or be more sexually promiscuous. So those kind of running themes of not wanting to get too emotionally involved with another person because they are avoidant. So the next one is ambivalent attachment, also called anxious attachment, because you can see that's kind of the child's general state of being. This, in the strange situation, would be if the parent left the room, the kid is going to start crying, but when the parent comes back, the kid is not going to stop crying. They're just going to be oh my God, I can't believe you left me. As adults, research says that these people will tend to have more unstable relationships. They will not trust their partner, but they'll also want to be close to their partner. This one also really gets kind of its hairs split if you start getting into psychology and attachment research. But on the MCAT, just know anxious ambivalent is going to be unstable adults, kind of wanting, being too overbearing in a relationship and then withdrawing and just kind of not unstable. And then the last one is disorganized attachment. And this one is kind of just a catch-all for everything else that doesn't fit in the others. So this is sometimes you're anxious, sometimes you're avoidant. It's kind of all up in the air. It doesn't have a good Ainsworth strange situation reaction. It's kind of just you can't predict what the child's going to do. They do something different every time. And then as far as how they are as adults, they are also just disorganized. I mean, that's a good word to describe it. Sometimes avoidant, sometimes ambivalent or anxious. And that's kind of how I think about it. So going back to the answer choices, A says participants think that others are reluctant to get close to them. That sounds to me like anxious. You're worried about other people not liking you. B, participants find it difficult to trust and depend on others. So that's classic avoidant. I don't want to get close to other people. Anxious would be I'm scared other people don't want to get close to me. So these people are avoidant attachment, so I like B. C says participants do not worry that they will be abandoned by others. That's secure attachment. If they're whatever the best answer choice is, whatever you would want to be, that's secure attachment. D says participants want to merge completely with others, and this desire pushes people away. I would say, if anything, that'd be more of like an anxious or an ambivalent attachment style of like wanting to be, like I said, overbearing. So that doesn't describe the avoidant attachment style. So the answer is going to be B there. Number 2 says, as infants, what type of parent-infant interaction most likely occurred for the participants? So again, this is just asking like kind of about, do you know like what causes these different attachment styles, like the strange situation. A says a confused infant-parent bond that is characterized by mixed separation anxiety and a tendency for the infant to resist and have a dazed behavior. So that would be disorganized. You see how they kind of like let you know that it's disorganized by saying like sometimes does this, sometimes does that. So we're looking for avoidant. B, an infant-parent bond that is characterized by some separation anxiety and a tendency for the infant to seek contact with the parent after separation. So that is secure attachment. They do, like I said, once the parent leaves the room, they do have like some separation anxiety, but once the parent comes back, they're able to be consoled. So no. C, an infant-parent bond that is characterized by strong separation anxiety and a tendency for the infant to resist contact with the parent after separation. So that would be anxious. They're not able to be consoled. They're still resisting contact. They're still crying even after the parent gets back. And they have strong separation anxiety. That's a key word there. D, an insecure infant-parent bond that's characterized by little separation anxiety, so that's sounding avoidant, and a tendency for the infant to resist contact with the parent. So that's definitely avoidant attachment style. I would also know a little bit about like what causes these things, like what kind of parenting style, I guess, kind of causes these attachment styles. And it's like exactly what you would think. Like avoidant attachment is due to like a neglectful parent, and secure is due to like a good loving parent, and then anxious is due to, I think it's like an inconsistent parent or something. Yeah, inconsistent, sometimes sensitive, sometimes neglectful. And then disorganized is just like more erratic. Sometimes the parent's neglectful, sometimes the parent's, it is inconsistent. So I guess that's easy to mix up with anxious, but in my eyes, it's like it adds more of that neglect aspect, and I think it's more extreme. And I've also heard sometimes that they will describe disorganized attachment being caused by like the child having to parent the parent at some point in their life. I don't really know if that's like consistent across research. I'm just saying what I've heard. Number 3 says, assume that participants in the study were divided into high and low avoidant attachment groups. So we are going to have to look at a graph. The graph represents the percentage of ambulance workers with high and low avoidant attachment styles by the time to recover from social withdrawal after following a critical incident. So let's do our classic figure interpretation. We're going to look at the axes first. The y-axis says percentage with social withdrawal, and then x-axis says time after the critical accident. So we got time, and then this is a percentage. So we got 2 groups in our key right here. The square is high avoidant and the triangle is low avoidant. So let's see, it looks like our high avoidant trends higher. So what does that actually mean? Even across time, they have a similar trend, but it's higher overall. So that would be that the percentage with social withdrawal is higher after the critical incident. So that kind of tracks, right? And it looks like after the critical incident, like time does help, time heals for both groups, but regardless, high avoidant is going to be more socially withdrawn. Okay, which conclusion is accurate based on the results of the graph? A says the largest percentage difference of social withdrawal between levels of avoidant attachment occurred 1 week following exposure to a critical accident. So let's look 1 week. That would be right here. And what the question is asking is that the largest percentage difference between the 2 different lines? And no, clearly, right? Like that's actually the shortest distance that we see between any of these lines. So that one's not going to be correct. More than half of the ambulance workers with low avoidant attachment style, so we're looking at this line, withdrew from social contacts immediately following exposure after a critical accident. So we're looking at immediately. And we want it to be more than half. Is it more than half? No, it's less than half, so that's not right. C says ambulance workers with high avoidant attachment were more likely than those with low avoidant attachment to report greater occurrence of social withdrawal following exposure to a critical incident. So that's a lot of words. Basically, if we rephrase this answer choice, it's kind of saying that these high avoidant attachment people reported greater social withdrawal following exposure to a critical incident than the low avoidant people. I'm sorry my voice is like this, I'm sick. So is that true? That would mean that they are higher up on the y-axis, and they are. We've already discussed that, and also like what we got from the results. So that is true. I really like that one. D says social withdrawal was the same for high and low avoidant attachment 1 month following exposure to a critical incident. So this would be 1 month. They are not the same. So that's not correct. C is our answer choice there. Number 4 says the internal working model that sets expectations about self and others described in the study is an example of. So this is probably talking about like this thing that they mentioned in the very first paragraph when they were talking about self and others. And really all it says about it is that early experiences with caregivers become internalized into a working model of expectations. So this is kind of what I want y'all to zone into, a working model of expectations. The question is basically asking, what is that? So is it an insight? So insight, to me, that doesn't normally, like that's not really like a psych word. That's just kind of like a word. And when I think of an insight, I think of like, oh, I just thought about something that would solve this problem or whatever. So I don't think that's right. I'm not going to mark it out, but I don't think that's right. B, a critical period. So a critical period is a time in development which is critical for the development of some kind of skill. Like there's a critical period of grammar, which is like, I think it's like before the age of 9 or something, where people are able to get the skills for grammar. And if they don't get the skills for grammar before the age of 9, then they kind of like can't ever do it. So that's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking here about a working model of expectations, not anything about like learning. C, a cognitive schema. So that's totally exactly what it's talking about here. Working model of expectations equals schema. And calling it a cognitive schema, all schemas are cognitive. D says a heuristic. I think this is probably the other best answer choice here. But the way that it's worded in the first paragraph, that these experiences with caregivers become internalized into a working model of expectations about self and others. When I think of a heuristic, I think of a shortcut to problem solving. And that's how you're going to see heuristics being explained on the MCAT. And I understand that heuristic can also be kind of explained as an expectation of sorts, kind of, like shortcut expectation, sort of. But there's no way that you should be able to mark out a cognitive schema. That's exactly what we're talking about here. So the answer choice is C. Number 5 says, assume that the researchers wanted to measure a behavioral component of ambulance workers' emotion regulation following exposure to a critical incident. Based on the study, which component is most likely to be assessed? So the key word here is behavioral. And when the MCAT says behavioral, they're talking about the behaviorism school of thought, which means nothing up here. The only thing that matters is what you actually do, like physically. So it's just asking what would be like a behaviorist kind of observation. A says journal entries of ambulance workers' emotional reactions following the critical incident. So that requires your brain. So no, like literally, if you are thinking about the mind or you're thinking about anything cognition wise, then you are not talking about behaviorism. So that's not right. B, ambulance workers' heart rates following the critical incident. So this is too physiological. This is not talking about their actions. It's talking about something that they cannot control. So that would not be right either. That's not behavioral. C says ratings of likability from coworkers following the critical incident. So to me, this is a maybe, because like, while it's not overtly talking about something that I'm doing or that these ambulance workers are doing, it is talking about like, I guess what I do is how others like rate their likability of me. So it's okay. It's not like directly what I want, but it's okay. D said all observations of workers' social interactions with others following the critical incident. So I like this because it is something that you do, like interacting, like actually like talking to other people. That is a behaviorism that you can observe overtly. And I think that it's more direct than C, which is why I like it better. 6 says, which brain region will be least activated when participants are completing the tasks in the study? So the first things first, what are the tasks in the study? So, and that's all kind of listed right here. They had to identify a critical incident they encountered in the past. So think about like memory kind of stuff. They had to remember stuff. This is just like more remembering. Additionally, they had to think about somatic complaints. So that would be like if they were having like pains or something. Somatic means like body. it doesn't really have anything to do with the mind unless you're talking about like somatosensory disorders. So they had to think about that. They had to talk about burnout, depression, and distress. So these are kind of reminding me of like emotions, including recalling physical and emotional stress responses were measured. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of memory. I'm seeing a lot of emotion stuff. So those areas of the brain were probably activated. So the hippocampus is our memory. When you see hippocampus, I just want you to think memory and that's it. When you see amygdala, I want you to think emotions, especially like strong and negative emotions. So they definitely were using that part of the brain, right? Prefrontal cortex is our executive, like decision making, higher emotions. Like it's what doesn't develop until you're like 25. So think of like more mature stuff. Sure, I like that. Higher emotions, mature decision making. The parietal lobe is like sensory. So to me, we're between A and C here. I'm going to go back up into the passage and see if I can split hairs between these two. Because like what we just read to me does not decide what the answer is. What else did these people have to do? So I see they did have to do a questionnaire. So that tells me that they did have to like probably use that frontal lobe and that prefrontal cortex decision making, remember? There was nothing in the passage that overtly said that they were like sensing anything in present. And so I'm just really wary of saying that they use the parietal lobe because the MCAT is like parietal lobe sensory. Even though the parietal lobe, like there's a ton of stuff in it, when you see it on the MCAT, think sensory. I think that they use the prefrontal cortex. What they're trying to say is that they use that maybe during the questionnaire, maybe when they were talking about their symptoms of burnout, something like that. That takes a little bit of higher, more mature, like decision-making kind of capabilities. So parietal lobe is going to be the answer there. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that breakdown. We're going to be bringing them to you every week or two. If you stuck around to see what was going on at the end, then I'm so glad because I am happy to announce that me and John have finally made our high yield MCAT book. It is up on our website now. It is like a 100-page document that talks about all the high yield stuff on the MCAT. Me and John worked all summer on it to cut all the fat so that you guys don't have to read all about the crap that doesn't get tested on the MCAT. There's so much stuff out there to know. We have to really like trim it down for the MCAT, and that's exactly what we did for y'all. It is up on our website right now, and the link is down in the description below, so definitely go check that out. Also, if you are currently studying for the MCAT and you liked these breakdowns, then you will love the fact that we have a free 4-month program up on our YouTube channel. Definitely go give that a look because it's something that John and I worked really hard on. And if you want more videos like this, please hit like and subscribe to our channel so that we can keep doing stuff like this for you guys. I will see you in the next one.